so we're talking about demystifying cerebral palsy, and I started off by saying cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy is a permanent damage to a baby's immature brain. And I said cerebral palsy can happen when the baby is in the womb, it can happen when the baby is just being born, and it can happen as the child is developing. Cerebral palsy, which is damage to the baby's brain, can happen when the child is in the womb, when the mother has some form of infection that can affect the baby's brain. It can happen as the child is just being born, if the child is starved of oxygen, if the child did not get to breathe in oxygen. It can affect the baby's brain and the child will come down with cerebral palsy. And then cerebral palsy can happen as the child is growing. So, what are the myths about cerebral palsy? There are different information flying around concerning cerebral palsy. Different information flying around concerning cerebral palsy. There are different things. People say different things. And throughout the years of my interaction with parents that have children with cerebral palsy, I've heard so many things, so many myths. Now, the first one is this: people believe that children with cerebral palsy are evil. This is not true. Children with cerebral palsy are not evil and they are not evil spirits. I've heard so many things about children with cerebral palsy. They are not evil and they are not evil spirits. They are not children with cerebral palsy are unique, they are beautiful, and they are quite smart. They are unique, they are beautiful, and they are quite smart. I've had cause to interact with different children that have cerebral palsy, and they're unique, they are smart, and they're capable of doing so many things. Another myth about cerebral palsy is that they are not smart. I've heard different rumors stating that children with cerebral palsy are not smart. They are not they're not like other typical children, but they are very smart. It is not true that children with cerebral palsy are not smart. They are quite smart. They are very smart. Cerebral palsy is a permanent damage that happens when the child is in the womb, when the child is born, or as the child is growing. But this doesn't affect the smartness of the child. Not all children with cerebral palsy have mental retardation. Cerebral palsy is not mental retardation. Cerebral palsy is quite different from mental retardation. Not not all children with cerebral palsy have mental retardation. There are actually some children with cerebral palsy that have some form of mental retardation, but quite a number of children that I've interacted with that have cerebral palsy, that are living with cerebral palsy, quite a number of them are very smart. Not all of them have mental retardation. Another myth I've heard about children with cerebral palsy is that they do not live long. This is so not true. There's something called life expectancy, and it is like the length of years that a person can spend on the earth. Now, research has shown us that people or children living with cerebral palsy can go into adulthood, like people that do not have cerebral palsy, and they can live near normal lives, like people that do not have cerebral palsy, and they can live really long. They can live into their 60s, into their 70s, into their 80s. People with cerebral palsy can live that long, provided they get proper care and provided they get enough intervention, enough devices that will cause them to adjust to the quality of life that can be afforded and that will cause them to find living and interacting with their environment very easy. Another myth I've heard about cerebral palsy is that cerebral palsy gets worse with age. Cerebral palsy doesn't get worse with age. Cerebral palsy doesn't get worse with age. The damage that happens, as at whenever it happens to that child, is a permanent damage. The damage doesn't get worse. The damage doesn't increase. The damage is a permanent damage. It's a permanent damage to an immature brain. So the permanent damage is not continuous. It doesn't keep on happening. It just happens once, and then the effect of that damage unravels itself throughout the course of that child's life. The effect of that damage unravels itself throughout the course of that child's life. It's not progressive. It doesn't keep on happening and happening again and again and again. So let me go over the myths I've talked about. Some people say children with cerebral palsy are evil. Children with cerebral palsy are not evil. Really fun to be with. I also said that people believe that children with cerebral palsy are not smart. And I was able to explain that cerebral palsy is not mental retardation. Cerebral palsy is not mental retardation. Not all children with cerebral palsy have mental retardation. There are quite some children with cerebral palsy that also have associated mental retardation. But children with cerebral palsy are quite smart. I've interacted with so many of them. They're quite smart. When taught to communicate, they know how to communicate. They know what they want. They can learn things. They can explore their environment. They can process things depending on the kind of cerebral palsy they have. Yes, there are different kinds of cerebral palsy, different manifestations of cerebral palsy, but we'll not be going into that. This Instagram live will just be addressing the myths and the facts. I also said another myth is that people believe that children with cerebral palsy do not live long. This is so not true. I was able to explain that research has established that people with cerebral palsy can live people with cerebral palsy can live nearly as long as those that have typical life. Yes. Another myth is that people believe that cerebral palsy gets worse with age. Cerebral palsy doesn't get worse with age. The brain damage that's happened at birth is a permanent damage. it doesn't get worse over time. It's a permanent damage that doesn't get worse over time. It's just the manifestation of the damage that unravels itself as the child grows and as the child develops. Then there is another myth I've not touched. Some people believe that children with cerebral palsy will never be able to walk again because of their lives. Well, depending on the extent of brain damage, depending on the kind of cerebral palsy, and depending on the manifestation of the cerebral palsy in that particular child, a child may or may not be able to walk. But with proper physical therapy and other associated therapy like occupational therapy, it is very possible that a child is being trained to lead functionally optimized life. A functionally optimized life deals with training a child to be able to do things for himself or herself with or without the use of assistive devices like wheelchairs, intelligent machines, different things, just to ensure that the child can carry on from day to day with different activities and tasks. I also want to establish that children with cerebral palsy can go on from high school, from high school to college, to they can go to universities depending on the country they are in. They can pursue the career of their dreams with the right orientation and depending on the extent of severity of the cerebral palsy that they have. Not all child with cerebral palsy should be abandoned. But here's what we find out. We find out that parents just abandon any child that they find out has issues. They just abandon them. They do not care for them. They do not take them to school or just give up on their education. I have read so many stories about children with cerebral palsy that went on to become doctors, went on to become dancers, went on to become lawyers. So children with cerebral palsy can become anything if they are helped, and if they get the right kind of intervention. They can get enough assistive devices, get enough help, get the aid that they require, get the training that they require, the right support. Yes, support is the word. They can get the right support. They can study through school. They can learn a skill, whatever it is, depending on the kind of brain damage, on the kind of cerebral palsy, and the type of care that they get, they can actually make something beautiful out of their lives. So having a child with cerebral palsy doesn't mean that the child should be abandoned. It just requires a different kind of commitment. It requires different interventions. It requires so many things. So I'd like to touch upon another point before I wrap up this Instagram live. I would like to touch upon the way forward. Having a child with cerebral palsy, I get to interact with different parents that have children with cerebral palsy, and then many of them usually want to know the way forward. So what's the way forward? Number one, having a child with cerebral palsy is not a death sentence. So I want to encourage people not to neglect that child. They should not neglect or give up, and then they should seek strength from God. We cannot leave God out of all this. God is the ultimate source of strength and is a sustainer and a sustenance. Now, a positive attitude, positive family attitude is everything. And that is why I spent the first few minutes of this IG live discussing the myths and the facts about cerebral palsy. Yes, having a positive attitude and riding on the right information changes everything. Having the right attitude fuels the family with energy. It's a long ride, a really long ride. Having a child with cerebral palsy is a long ride, it's a long journey. It changes many things, it modifies many things. But having a positive attitude is very essential. Having a positive attitude is very essential because it will help the family go a long way. Having the right attitude, the right support system will help the child go a long way, and it will help the child make something positive out of life. Now, feeding nourishing food cannot be over. Having interacted with some families, we just notice that they don't get to feed their children properly. They do not feed their children because they just feel like the effect of the feeding might not be obvious. Maybe they feel like it's a waste of time trying to feed a child with cerebral palsy. Proper nutrition is very essential as it helps that child grow properly. It helps to make up for the deficiencies. It helps to strengthen the child, boosts the child's immune system. So proper feeding and nourishment is very essential for a child with cerebral palsy. Communication is also another thing I would like to touch upon before wrapping up. It is important to teach a child with cerebral palsy communication. Communication is very important for a child with cerebral palsy. The needs of that child, encourage the child, because even children with cerebral palsy, they go through a lot that they might not be able to express because of the deficiencies that they have to deal with. But it is important to have effective and positive communication, teach the family to communicate, teach the child to communicate. This is very important. And another major factor that must not be ignored is consistency with therapy sessions, physiotherapy, occupational therapy. Physiotherapy and occupational therapy are very important for a child with cerebral palsy. Many people get to confide in me and tell me that nobody told them anything when they realized that they had a child with cerebral palsy. They went to the hospital, there was no referral to a physiotherapist, there was no referral, there was no proper follow up. Having a child with cerebral palsy is a lot. And then the parents of that kind of child will need to see a pediatrician who will refer to a pediatric neurologist and then refer to a physiotherapist. It is very important to be consistent with physiotherapy sessions, I must also explain that having a child with cerebral palsy is not like having malaria. You know, malaria, when someone has malaria and the person is given drugs and injections, with that kind of treatment, the malaria dies down, the malaria goes away. But cerebral palsy is not like that. It requires consistent therapy session, consistent physiotherapy sessions where goals will be set for the child to be able to hold the neck up, for the child to be able to sit, for the child to be able to stand, for the child to be able to roll, for the child to be able to use his hands and his legs. Different goals will be set, and then the goals will need to be followed up on. And this can only be achieved through proper physiotherapy session. So I'll go through the way forward again. A very positive attitude is very important for families that are dealing with that have children dealing with cerebral palsy. Having a positive attitude is important. Seeking strength from God is very important. Feeding nourishing food cannot be overemphasized. Effective and positive communication is also very important. And consistency with physiotherapy and home programs are also very, 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 very important. I don't know if anyone has any question for me. I can take questions. I can take questions. I can take questions for me. Questions. 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 I can see Tiwa in the comment section. You're welcome. Okay, so I can see a question. Are there corrective surgeries for cerebral palsy patients? Okay, like I explained, cerebral palsy is not like malaria. When a child has cerebral palsy, it requires series of physiotherapy interventions to get the child to achieve different goals. There is no surgery, there's no corrective surgery that can correct cerebral palsy. Like I earlier explained, cerebral palsy is a permanent damage to an immature brain. Once the brain is damaged, it is damaged. A corrective surgery cannot be done to the brain that's been damaged. It cannot be done to reverse the damage in the brain. Once the brain is damaged, it is damaged. But there are different studies going on, there are different research going on, and we are hoping for a breakthrough that something can be done to reverse the damage. But as at now, once a child has cerebral palsy, no corrective surgeries can be done to reverse the condition and make the brain appear as though it was never damaged. No, there is no surgery like that. Is there any question before we wrap up? We're almost done. Anyone with questions for me again? Any other questions before we wrap up this segment? Okay, in the absence of questions, I would like us to just type a myth and a fact. A myth and a fact. Is it the network? Over the myths again. So I said children with cerebral palsy are not evil. Children with cerebral palsy are smart. Children with cerebral palsy can live long, and then the damage doesn't get worse with age. They can walk with proper intervention and depending on the severity of the brain damage, and they can lead functionally independent lives with the right therapy and with the right intervention. Yes, there will be a follow-up session. The next session coming up will extensively talk about developmental milestones and delays and link it to cerebral palsy. I want to thank everyone for coming. Follow-up session and proper notification will be sent. Thank you for coming. I celebrate everyone. Enjoy your evening.